My puppy turned 4 months old this week. So let me share a little bit about what a day in the life of Susan and Prophet looks like. So generally I get up around 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe a little bit before, maybe a little bit after, but Prophet stays sleeping in his crate. He sleeps in a crate right beside my face. It's probably getting close to time that I put him on the floor in his crate, but I kind of like having the guy hanging out there. So he's right at my face level on a nightstand in his crate. I get up at 5 a.m. He sleeps in. He doesn't even budge when I get up. I go and do my morning routine, my meditation, my yada, yada, yada. And he sleeps. I come and wake him up somewhere between 7 and 7:30, and we have a little bit of a cuddle because he is a snuggly little boy. We then go outside for him to do his business. Generally, first thing in the morning, he will both urinate and defecate, and I do have conditioned words for each of those activities. Actually, his breeder started with his urination cue, so I've kind of stuck with that German cue. And then we come inside, and he has some free time romping around the house. He's just been in a crate all night, so I will do what I have to do in the kitchen. He's usually playing with a toy by himself. Occasionally, he might try to engage Swagger. It's rarely that he gets anything out of Swagger. And that goes on until 8 o'clock. It depends on the day. So some days I work out at 8 o'clock in the morning, and other days I work out at 10 o'clock in the morning. So when I go to work out, he goes in an X-pen, or if I'm going to go upstairs to do some work, so somewhere between 8 and 9, he will go into his X-pen. In that X-pen will be things for him to chew on, beds for him to sleep on. I will throw enrichment, like a puppy bomb in there occasionally. Like, again, remember I said in podcast episode number 239, you want to be predictably unpredictable. So there is never a schedule where this happens at every day at this time. I always give you a puppy bomb at this time. Sometimes he'll get a pizzle and a pizzle holder. Sometimes he'll get a food puzzle that he can work through. Sometimes he'll just go in there and play with the things that are in there. So he's got chew things in there, nothing that he can really de-stuff. And of course, he's a Susan Garrett puppy, so he has lots of dog beds in there. So he stays in his X-pen, and we deal with each puppy differently. If they get distracted by all the things that are going on, we might move their X-pen away from all the action. I like to have the puppy out in the middle of the action because that's how they learn to deal with all the noises and activity that goes on in the house. And so 9:30, he gets his breakfast. And that is almost always a training session. So if I'm working out, I finish my workout. If I'm going to work out at 10, then I'll probably give him his breakfast at 9. And that training session probably lasts for 20 minutes. Now, we are not training for 20 minutes straight. We're playing games. For example, this morning training session was cutting his nails. So that was the last 10 minutes of it. And the first 10 minutes was doing some fitness exercises. Always balancing anything that is more focused related to him with something that's action and fun with him. Because I don't want to bog down the puppy's brain with things that are just too heavy. Light, playful, tugging, retrieve games, along with doing things that are maybe some target work or learning to sit or stand or down. There's so many things that we're working on. 40 behaviors we're working on, along with so far 7 location-specific reinforcement markers. So tons of things that he's learning. After his breakfast, he goes back outside and has a little romp around, depending on the weather, back inside, a little run around the kitchen, and then he's back in his X-pen while I go about my morning routine. He sleeps most of the morning. And then at lunchtime, we go out, and lunchtime is generally his walk session. Now, I don't walk my puppies very much for 2 reasons. Number 1, they don't need it. Number 2, they haven't really learned to deal with all the distractions they might see on a big walk, especially if you're in the city. But also, they're going to pull on leash. And pulling on leash becomes a habit. And I don't want my puppies to have that habit. So I try to avoid them ever pulling on a leash. And so what I do on my big walk that I do, and it's 1 kilometer around our field, that's like 6/10 of a mile for those of you who are not into kilometers. And what I do is I take his raw food that he's having for lunch, and I put it into a squeeze tube. It makes it super easy to work with his raw food while I'm walking. I can just give him a little squirt when he's in reinforcement zone. Now, the walk starts out on leash, and of course, he's staying in reinforcement zone because we do this almost every day. And I mark it with a word, cook, which means stay where you're at, and I will deliver reinforcement right to your mouth. Now, I do have a pay pouch with some other cookies on there so I can give faster reinforcement if there's something I need to do. But partway along that walk, I'll take him off leash and he can just explore. And when he comes back and chooses to find reinforcement zone, he gets more reinforcement. So that's how he gets his lunch. And then a little bit more time ripping around the house and back into the X-pen 3 days a week, maybe 4. He goes off-site. So we go to a different training class or 2 different training buildings that we go to just to get him that experience. I will take him into the city to do some experience with traffic or kids or things that we don't have out here in the country, or a store, a pet store, a big box brand hardware store. I'll take him somewhere to get him away, and then he's back to sleeping. Remember, he slept most of the morning, he's sleeping most of the afternoon. Dinner time happens. Again, there's no real schedule, between 5 and 7 usually for him. And again, dinner time is a little bit of a training session. Now, depending on my schedule, if my schedule doesn't permit it, he might get his food in a topple or several topples. He might get his food in a training. I use his raw food with bowls. So I have a main bowl and a spoon, so I might reinforce him directly with a spoon. I might use another bowl where I will slide it across the floor to him. Whatever, it depends on what we're working on. So yes, I'm a raw feeder, but I don't think that's a problem for my training. There's some downside, like if you're a kibble feeder, you can just hand out kibble really quick when you're feeding. And yes, it's a little bit more involved if you're a raw feeder, but the advantage is nothing is as high value to my puppy as his raw food. And so I've got like an outrageously high value food that I use with him 3 times a day, which is amazing. So some nights of the week, we will go to the building after dinner and do a training session where he might work on watching me train another dog and being calm. We might do some recall work. Generally in the building, it's a lot of action, and in the house, it's less action. I also, if the weather's permitting, we're going to do that sort of work outside as well. So bedtime for both of us is generally around 9 or 9:30, and he will get a little bit more free time to run around in my bedroom as I'm doing my evening routine. And then he's back in his crate, and that's it till the next day.